Hey, Stretch, Crack Cat used the Communist Manifesto like a litter box again.
Mein Gott, no communism.
Yeah, you're right, little guy. There's no room for communists or Marxists here. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're back again. We're going to talk about censorship, impeachment, and the inauguration. Before we get started with that, go ahead, like, subscribe, share with your friends. That's the only way the channel could grow. It's been growing pretty good, but I'd still like it to grow even faster if we can. Let's get some engagement going in the comments. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, go ahead and hit dislike. Share with your friends so they can dislike it too. And they may have something to say in the comments about what I'm saying doesn't make any sense. But with that, censorship. The Orwellian 1984, which I really don't want to see come to pass in our country, but there's some really big questions going on about modern day censorship is known as deplatforming. If you've read the Antifa handbook, that's one of their biggest things. Although this is not coming from Antifa. This is coming from Twitter, which has been banning conservatives. And the claim is that they're inciting violence. Well, there's a website called the Wayback Machine, which you can go to and look up people's tweets and what they put on Instagram and various postings they've made. And just to verify, because there's a lot of politicians and celebrities I don't agree with, but I do follow them because hearing their opinion gives me something to talk about on here, but it also gives me a way to listen to what they're saying. Because there may be some good ideas in there, and just because I don't agree with the majority of their policies doesn't mean I can't listen to good ideas that they have. And that's the biggest thing we lose when people start to censor. So going through the Wayback Machine and looking at the president's tweets, I didn't see any that incited violence. A lot of them are just ridiculous. I mean, it's just sheer jackassery, for lack of a better word, but not inciting violence. And when we start claiming people are inciting violence or they're organizing violence, which is the reason they shut down Parler, they have to be really careful with that because you can use the Wayback Machine to look at some of these Antifa type groups and find where they were organizing for some of these protests in Portland and Seattle and Chicago. And they put it out there on social media and they weren't deplatformed. So apparently it's a one-way street. Now, when we talk about claims of inciting violence, the prime example would be, I'll take you back to a peaceful time in 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown's stepfather on national TV made a comment, let's burn this bleep down. And a couple hours later, the majority of Ferguson was on fire. Now, before I be accused of hypocrisy, had it been my son or my stepson, there's a good chance I would have said the same thing. I will admit that. But that is inciting violence, and that violence came to fruition. The happenings on January 6th at the Capitol, the timestamps prove that President Trump was still speaking when the initial breaches on the Capitol happened. Which means, regardless of what he said in his speech, there was people that had it set in their heads that were going to do this. And he was not solely responsible for that. Now, the other problem with censorship is, and we use North Korea, China, and the former Soviet Union as an example. Well, if you go to Naomi Park's page, Voice of North Korea, which I've talked about it a few times, and I'll add the link to it to this, and you can hear her discuss how they still got Western movies in North Korea. In China, there's still people that have access to Western goods and Western news. In the former Soviet Union, the 3-volume book, Gulag Archipelago, was written while it was still the Soviet Union and hidden by several people in various places. And that was at a time where you could still get 10 years just for having knowledge of this book and not reporting it. And yet, all these places, they still have access to things they're not supposed to have, things that they could face time in prison for. Which leads us to the third problem with censorship. And shutting down Parler is a good example, because Parler was known as the right-wing Twitter, or trying to become that in a lot of people's eyes. Well, what you do is create vacuums. You have far left, you have populist left, you have populist right, and you have far right, and then you have the alt-right. And I guess I'll call Antifa the alt-left, because although they agree with some things, they're a little beyond even the most liberal person in Congress that you could think of. Now, by deplatforming these people, these various groups cannot hear each other's opinions. These various groups are in a vacuum where all they hear is opinions that agree with them. It's like I said earlier, why do I read these other people's tweets or posts on Instagram? Even if I don't agree with the majority of what they say and what they stand for, they may still have some good ideas. Or I may have to go back and look at myself and say, is my idea really that much better than theirs? And you lose the ability to do that when you start banning things. I mean, it's no difference than banning and burning books. Deplatforming is the same thing. And you can say it's a private company, but other people can make the argument that social media has become the new commons, the new town square, where groups used to meet to express differences of opinion. And they discuss these differences of opinion. And one of those differences of opinion is what led to the American Revolution. So keep that in mind. Had the British been able to ban Thomas Paine, where would we be now? And that leads to talking about the impeachment. Because if the president incited that violence on January 6th, then that's fine. But the impeachment, he leaves office in 2 days, as I'm filming this. He'll be gone. He will lose a huge part of his platform. He's been deplatformed from social media for the most part. Why go through with the impeachment? Notice they got it done in less than a week. But they dragged their feet for 8 months on COVID relief when people have to feed their kids and pay rent. And businesses are going bankrupt and will never come back again. New York City, 30% of small businesses will not return because they cannot afford to. But they can get the articles of impeachment done in less than a week. And then send them to the Senate. But there's not going to be time to hold the impeachment trial before he's out of office. So we get on the slippery legal slope of, can you impeach a former president? Which the Constitution doesn't say anything about. It's never been done before. It's never been tried. And you also have members of the House saying the sole purpose of the impeachment is to ensure he can never hold public office again. Well, what happens when Joe Biden leaves office? There's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on that they need to investigate about business dealings in China and the Ukraine and emails that have been found. So what if they find grounds to impeach him? But wait until he's a lame duck president before he leaves office, when the support for him isn't as strong because the new president has support. The precedent we're setting is not a good one. And if the Biden administration means what it says about reconciling both sides of America, then one of the best ways to start that is to just have the Democrats drop this. Let it go. Let President Trump move on back into the business world. And then we start the next 4 years fresh. It's the perfect time for these two groups to take a knee, take a breath, and decide to act peacefully to resolve their differences. Now, the inauguration, I don't know for sure what's going to happen on January 20th. What I really hope and pray is that it's calm, it's peaceful. I'm not going to make a lot of comments. I've been hearing, especially the last couple of days, about the walls being put up and anything like that. I would like to say the truly negative thing I see about it, and this is not a reflection of the members of the National Guard and Reserve, but there's 25,000 National Guard and Reserve troops in Washington, D.C. The last time there was that much military security for an inauguration, we were in the middle of the Civil War. I remember a point in Afghanistan where we didn't have 25,000 troops there yet, and we were fighting a war. So what this leads to, I don't know. What I hope for is a peaceful day, and then we start the new administration. Now, I'll do another video on inauguration night based on what's happened that day and the expectations I have for the Biden administration. And I have pretty high expectations because the Democrats control the White House, the Senate, and the House. There's no reason we cannot get effective criminal justice, effective immigration, and something done to fully fund mental health programs. Those are my big three, and I will stick with those three. Even as a veteran, yes, and veterans programs are important to me, but they're a little bit better administrated and less confusing than immigration. Criminal justice, you know what? President Biden, you created the crime bill. So let's do something to fix it now while you have the power to do that. Mental health reform, that's a huge one that we need. And coupled with that is something to do with drug rehabilitation to fight this opioid crisis. It's not going away. We just haven't been talking about it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, everybody have a good evening. Stay safe. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Let's get some interaction going in the comments. If you don't like what I'm saying, hit dislike and tell me why in the comments. Share it with your friends so they can tell me too. Everybody have a safe evening.